Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to your usual The Eternal Cylinder live stream. We have a very special one for you today. My name is Genesee Gray from Good Shepherd Entertainment, and we have, as you call him, writer Jonas, here to talk to you about all the questions that you've been saving up about the game. So first of all, Jonas, I told you I'd say it. Reveal thyself! Tell everyone your full name, other than just writer Jonas, and how does that work, like, as a writer for video games? If someone comes to you and says, hey, I have a title, it's called The Eternal Cylinder, what do you do at that point?
Okay, hi, I'm Jonas. My last name is pronounced Kiradziz. That was the Greek pronunciation. Kiradziz, if you want to approximate it. How does it work? Well, that depends on the game. People come to you, in this case, people who are already friends, Ace Team, and they say, hi, we have this thing that we're working on. Um, we need a story. They frequently say, oh, we have some notion of what the story should be, but we need someone to help us develop it and then actually write it. And then what you do in my case is you read everything they've got, you play whatever they have, or watch videos, look at concept art, and then you start developing it and try to make a meaningful, cohesive story out of it. And then you go through the process of actually then turning that into a game and trying to see that it all works with all the many changes that are going to be necessary.
When you first hear this, do you look for other things that might remind you of the game? Like, oh, I would like to look at environments of these kinds of, biomes, and then I can write something that relates to that. Like, how do you find all the things that are real and then make up the things you need to make up that they all kind of come together?
I try to look at the game that I'm currently working on and not so much let other things influence me, except when it comes to specific sort of story types, things like, okay, I want to tell some kind of folk story. Okay, then you might look at folk story structures or things like that. But in general, I try to focus very much on what I have in the current material, not just in the environments, but also in the gameplay, in the kind of design um, that I'm being presented with. So in the case of the Eternal Cylinder, that means that you have this amazing premise. So immediately you have to start thinking, okay, what does this mean? I have to build everything around the cylinder. I can't tell an incidental story and then there's also a cylinder in it, a giant crushing mega structure cylinder thing. Um, so for me, everything kind of proceeds from the structure of the game, the gameplay of the game, and what are sort of the big, central core elements of it. And I try to base myself very much on that. And then when I need to do research for other things, obviously, I do. For this game, I couldn't exactly go to the Trebon planet and research something. But for other games, of course, it can mean reading books and watching movies and whatever is kind of relevant um, to that game.
Very cool. We're going to talk about this a lot more and take your community questions that you're leaving right now live in Twitch. So go ahead and ask those, and we'll be looking at them and adding them to our doc here. But before we get too far into it, we are going to talk about the contest that we have this week. This is a Discord specific contest, so if you haven't followed us there, the link will be in the chat, but basically just look up the Eternal Cylinder. You can find us there. The contest was to create your own elder and tell us a little bit about them. So before we get too far into the contest, I'm going to show you some images. Can you explain, Jonas, what the elders are in the context of the game and maybe how they interact with the player so people that don't know have a clue what we're showing?
Okay, so the elders are very old Trebum. Um, they are physiologically different from the Trebum that we play in the game. That means they're much larger because they're much older. They're probably hundreds of years potentially old compared to the little babies that we play. And they're the sole survivors of the Trebum civilization. And when you encounter them, they help you in certain important ways. So it's very significant to find them because they're trying to keep their species alive.
Okay, so our friends in Discord really stepped up. We have some great art. It was hard to choose, but I'm going to jump to contest now. And our winner for this week is Noodle. And this is Yenu the Elder. Jonas, will you share more about Yenu the Elder that was written by Noodle?
Okay, I will read what it says here. Yanu, Yonu, Yonu. Uh, Studying to be a scientist, Yanu spent much of their early life researching trebamite, a substance. After their schooling, Yanu went on to perform large-scale research on how to grow water crops, leading them to adopt the webbed feet mutation. This was Yanu's life's work, continuing even after the old Trebham went blind from staring at the plants for too long. Never stare at plants for too long; it's very dangerous. Jonas' greatest breakthrough, however, was genetically engineering a mushroom both high in food and water content, which could survive in nearly any environment, off of nutrients and water in the air. It sounds delicious. The fields and laboratories in which Jonas spent their entire life working were destroyed by the cylinder, causing the elder to retire to a cave and tend to the small herd of Glickball living there. Although prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice in the face of this new and terrifying threat, Jonas' last and greatest wish is to pass on the memory of how to grow the hearty mushroom to the next generation of Trebham, as it could be the key to feeding the surviving population in a world flattened by the cylinder. That's very nice. He looks a bit sad. Um, but then again, you would be if your entire world was crushed by a weird alien cylinder.
Yes, and also if people came to visit you and then left you while the cylinder came to crush you.
Yes, that's very unfortunate for the elders, but the future belongs to the young, and the old are going to be crushed.
Wow.
Yeah, that's bleak, right?
It
But it
is.
is a slightly bleak game, so in some ways.
True.
Otherwise, this makes sense as a story, I have to say.
Okay. So our second place winner is Mr. Mastman. There's a very triumphant looking elder here, who's Woof the elder. You can try to say that. I think it's Woof. Go for it. Explain Woof's story.
Okay, let's read this. Like many who came before him, Woof the Elder maintained the belief that Trebham were to be the stewards of their world. He spent much of his adult life as the elder of a temple that proudly sat atop the tallest mountain in the world, working tirelessly to nurture life both on the temple grounds and throughout the cloud forests around him. Then the cylinder came and deployed its wicked servants across the land. They toppled the great trees and sheared down the mountains in preparation for their master's arrival. Woof barely escaped with his life, but managed to bring with him a few plant and animal specimens, a scrap of the vibrant ecosystem that once flourished atop the peaks. In his old age, he desperately wanders the land, searching for a place to establish a new cloud forest, but the cylinder itself approaches with each passing day. He has taken on the quadruped legs mutation to support his immense weight, but even then he required the aid of a tree branch to walk. His shell, meanwhile, protects him from the beasts and servants that prowl these flattened lands. This is a very dangerous looking, gigantic Trebham.
Mm-hmm.
He must be very, very old and very, very dangerous.
I think that's his walking stick, although you couldn't tell if he was tearing up trees, but he seems very.
Yeah, but when you have a tree for a walking stick, you're kind of big.
I like his squares, his checks though.
Yeah, and
They're
he has a lot of personality. Clearly, he has a lot of attitude there in his face. I like him.
buzz. Okay, and our third place winner is from SMJ James, and this is Tedisol. Teged. Oh my gosh, it's like Thomas Edison. He says Teg Edisol. I'm gonna call him. You go for it, Jonas.
Okay, Tege de Sol. I'm going to not read all the secondary comments here. The genius inventive, the revival shrine, cloud saving shrine. Ah, yes, okay. He uses the analytic eye mutation and the fictional fractal trunk mutation, which I'm sorry, but looks terrifying. Um, the interesting factor is that while the actual fractal trunk can be used on some level by most Trebham, it's not an easy one to be used to its full extent, and learning how to master it takes years, and even then, true masters of it aren't common. Tege de Sol is one such true master of it, and also some sort of horrifying Cthulhuid Lovecraftian creature. No, I mean, yes, he does. He does look like something that Lovecraft would see in his
But then he has
dreams.
a utility belt, which really just makes it for me.
Yes, he's very sweet, a very sweet, terrifying creature. Um, Besides the mutations, his legs are normal but mechanically enhanced by exoskeleton. No, he can't leap a skyscraper, but it does allow him to walk around normally. He also has a cybernetic implant because high-tech society, and why not?
Why not?
The belt is a utility belt with small satchels for stuff and random tools of the invention trade, a hexa multi-wrench, a multi-screwdriver, and a laser multi-tool thingy. That's what it says there. It's a thingy.
Yes.
Uh,
Wow.
That's it. Yes. He is a very interesting, eccentric trapper.
Yes, he's lovely. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to show you a little bit of the footage from the Guerrilla Collective that was shown kind of cut into a trailer. So here's a little more of it while we talk more about your questions and answer some of your things. Let me know if it needs to be a little louder at any point. Good. All right, so here's Discord questions first. Nintendo Nate, is there a trebum unit of measurement?
Probably yes. Since it has no reason to appear in the game, we don't know what it is.
It's magic,
but
isn't it?
yes, of course. I mean, they were an advanced civilization. But what it is, who knows? I mean, they probably had many of them, equivalents of centimeters and weights and this and that. And who knows? I don't know if they know, because the Trebum have forgotten a lot of stuff, unfortunately.
Sarah asks, how did you come up with the idea of the Trebum being an advanced species?
Well, this is because you see certain things in the game, maybe not in parts that you've reached, but you certainly, this is certainly evident in the world that they've left behind, that they used to be far more advanced than they are now. When you start the game, they appear to be animals. But as you go, you realize that there's a lot more to them. So this is something that was just kind of inherent in the world that Ace Team were building.
And what were your ideas about the narrator sentences? Like, when you're writing them, I guess they're trying to ask, like, do you have visual in mind, or how do you visualize the narrator sentences kind of fitting into the game?
Well, the narrator is, in a way, the most important thing in the entire story. I don't want to give away too much, but to me, the first question you should ask yourself when you play the game is, why is there a voice talking to me? Why is there a voice talking to me that the Trebum seem to be aware of? Like, it's talking to them, they're hearing it as an actual voice, and what does that mean? So the way I approached it was just asking that question. Like, I knew that there was going to be a narrator, but then the question was, what does that mean? And from there, a lot of things followed that I can't tell you about because you have to play the game.
Okay, Zergo asks, whose idea was it for the mathematician?
Oh, that was Ace Team, obviously. Now, the precise meaning and story of the mathematician was impacted a fair bit by the writing that I did and by story elements that I came up with. His relationship to the cylinder, i.e. who is in control, what is his role, what is he about, that changed. I don't want to give too much away again, but I did the writing that I did sort of had an influence on the original concept that Ace Team came up with.
What inspirations did you borrow or use from the lore fragments, both the ones we know, Naka and Barbaragar, and ones that haven't been revealed yet?
Well, these little fragments that you find in there, they're really meant to indicate the idea that there's a culture behind the Trebum. So they're not based on any specific individual human culture. Like, I didn't try to imitate a particular sort of thing from one culture. But these little bits that you see, and there's really not that much of them because, again, a lot of Trebum history is lost. They're kind of inspired by the patterns that a lot of if you look at a lot of proto sort of mythologies, like the origins of a lot of mythologies, they follow a lot of certain patterns. A descent into the underworld, for example, is a very common one. So I tried to model it on that kind of story. So not on a specific story from a specific culture, but I tried to have the same sort of logic behind them as a lot of stories have in the real world. That is an interest of mine. I used a little bit of that also on a previous game that we did with Ace Team, Soul Seraph, that had some issues, but in terms of the story, that was a game that I enjoyed a lot, and that drew a lot on Proto-Indo-European language and mythology, and this is kind of similar, but again, there's not tons of it because it's meant to more sort of indicate the existence of a larger world than just kind of dump a big, Wikipedia of law on you.
They spend a lot of time looking up the Latin, like different kind of plants and different kinds of animals have the Latin name in the description that we've been sharing, and so they've been spending a lot of time breaking down the Latin name and what that means and what it could indicate about the specific plant or the specific creature.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been pretty neat to see.
Yeah, there's a lot in those. I mean, they are funny as well if you understand them.
Uh huh.
A lot of them are humorous. They're not like wrong humorous, but they are amusing to me. They mix Latin and Greek, as a lot of actual names of things do. There is an interesting question to be asked: is where are they coming from? That's something that I think you can put together if you play the full game. Like because the Trebhum certainly didn't come up with those names. And but I'm not going to say more about that.
Okay. Nintendo Nate is referring in this question to a previous stream with Edmundo where I think it was him who showed kind of a headdress drawing, concept drawing of the Trebhum wearing these very ornate hats. So they're asking, how did the Trebhum from the last stream obtain this sort of ceremonial headdress, and will they be in the game?
They will not be in the game as far as I know. They are something that the Trebhum used to have as part of their civilization. So there's potentially all kinds of things, not only like hats, but also mutations and all sorts of things that are long lost now. But that the Trebhum used to have when they were a bigger civilization, and that's what they wore, or that's what their heads looked like. If it's a mutation, when they called it the Trawala, but that's another sort of thing where the game has a sort of almost archaeological dimension where you're piecing together a lot of elements and trying to make sense of them. And yeah, here you see a fragment of what the Trebhum culture used to be like when it was much bigger and more advanced.
If you would live in a biome, which one would it be?
The savannah, because I don't want to die.
Fair point, really. Okay. Walladir asks, is there one mathematician or many? And they're referring to the portion in the beta, which I won't reveal, where you're kind of close to the cylinder, and then there's a mathematician climbing over it.
There's just one. If you saw something looking different, you might have been looking at some changes in the game or video or something. But there's definitely just one mathematician. Was there a second part to that question? Did I forget something just now?
No, you're good.
Okay.
Noodle wants to know, is there any concept art for Trebhum civilizations, such as fields, cities, laboratories? It seems like the Trebhum had impressive control over their planet before the Founder arrived.
I don't think there's any concept art for how the world used to be, just because of what game making is like. So we can't really spend resources doing something that we're not going to then produce. That's just the reality of making games. You're trying to save every dollar. So there is no concept art of it, except it exists in our minds. Like we've certainly imagined what that civilization used to look like, and obviously created sort of the broken down version of it. But I don't think there's anything that shows the Trebhum at their height. It's a shame. I would love to see it if somebody wants to try.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I've looked through pretty much all the concept folders, and I don't think there's anything in there that they want to see. That's showing all the reveals that they're hoping for. Okay, so now we're jumping into the other questions that you guys are asking in stream right now. So SMJ James asks, how are the elders physiologically different from regular adult Trebhum other than being really old? Unless that's spoilery.
I don't know if this is in the demo. There is the suggestion somewhere. It might even be said very clearly. Excuse me, it's been a while since I wrote all of this, so I don't remember exactly which bit is where currently. Where there is a suggestion that the elders actually develop gender or sex, biological sex, as they grow older, so some are male and female, whereas the current Trebhum don't have one. So they do actually go, through some biological changes as they grow older. Whereas the young Trebhum are basically sexless. Other than that, it's just their pure sort of size and I assume certain biological changes that will probably come with that, certain metabolic changes and so on.
Whoever created games is afraid of the size of these giant elders. Projecting. Wants to know if they stop growing at some age, or planet-sized elders in your future coming to you soon.
Oh, you mean we'll do the Eternal Cylinder 2 and it'll be on a elder, the
Yes.
oldest elder, and he's the size of a planet.
Just a backwards saga.
I assume that they stop growing at some point. I mean, they seem to age, so presumably at some point that all kind of starts shutting down, as with humans. But it might be longer than with a human, and the difference is more extreme. How big do they grow? I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll do a giant one in the next game. I'm not saying that there is a next game, by the way.
Okay. Coco Pops is asking the languages that the game's going to be in. I will have Jonas, who's doing the moderation, just like copy you the Epic store page, because there's a number of them, but they're on the store page. We'll just list them for you in chat, and I'll read them if I find them later. Okay, Sarah Miss Panchu asks, were the Trebums the first species on the planet?
Not the first, since they evolved from something. They were probably the first sentient creatures on that planet. It's not set on a post-apocalyptic Earth, let's say that. Like, it is a different place, and they are the primary intelligent species of that place.
Okay, so I am waiting for a couple more questions to come in from chat. Keep asking them if you like. We're going to move on to some interview questions and then jump back. So ask if you like, but let's jump to some of the other things. Like, people, I don't think I might immediately recognize your name itself, but they know you because a lot of people love the Talos Principle from Crow Team and the Serious Sam series, Phoenix Point, from Snapshot Games. All this, I mean, these are pretty beloved franchises. So let's talk about you and how you got started as a writer and why choose video games.
Okay, I chose video games because it was possible for me. I mean, when I started trying to make games, I was 16, so that was a long time ago. And the world was very different. There were no indie games as such. There was no indie game scene and so on. None of that existed. Uploading a 3 megabyte game to the internet took like an hour. So that was a very different world. And I just wanted to do stuff. I just wanted to make stories. I've always, had the impulse to tell stories. And I was a kid in Greece. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? Go to Hollywood? I don't have the resources, but I can learn how to program a little bit. I can put together some graphics. I can start making some games. Back then, it was much harder than it is now. There's obviously much better software. Back then, I was using Visual Basic 5, I think. So I just started doing that. And I made some games. I made some freeware games, sort of story-heavy stuff. And I kept doing that as a kind of semi-hobby. Then I did it with Flash games to actually make some money. Then Crow Team hired me to do Talos, and eventually it sort of became a profession. And I got the jobs that I got off of the games that I had made before because nobody else was quite doing that. So in a way, in a very strange way, the second game I ever made, The Infinite Ocean, that was a game about, it was a point and click game about artificial intelligence. And I remade that as a Flash game in 2010. And off of that, eventually I got the Talos Principle because Tom Joubert, who co-wrote the Talos Principle with me, played that, really liked it. And then when he got hired to do Talos and thought he couldn't do it by himself, he said, why don't I do this with Jonas? And he showed Crow Team my game and they played it. They thought this is pretty cool. So they hired me to do that. So in a way, I eventually got the whole Crow Team thing and all of that off of the second game I ever made. But you have to consider that it took like 10 years.
Well, you're a game designer as well, not just a writer. So how does that hurt or help you when you're writing for a game and you know someone else will have to execute that vision? Are you gleefully laughing or just going, I can imagine it, here's what they need to do?
Yeah, having the experience of being a designer means that I think in production terms. So I'm like, how many assets is this going to cost? How is this actually going to work with the gameplay? I'm always very conscious of the relationship between narrative structures and gameplay, because you can't just write a story and just stick it onto a game, because of games are very complicated and they can break in a lot of ways narratively as well. So you really have to think, how is this going to work, and if the player does this, then what happens, and how do we make it all feel like it's real and cohesive. So I think my game design experience is very helpful in that regard. It's less helpful if you're working on a, shall we say, more frustrating project, and the designers are making choices that you don't love, and you're going out of your head saying, why don't we do this? But then everyone's like, oh, but you're a writer. You don't know about this. I mean, I've designed more games than you have. This is not something that's happened to me with Ace Team, because they're lovely.
Good. Okay, Blue Critter Games, that's an interesting question. I don't know if there's a way to answer this, Blue Critter Games, but I'll put it out there. Is there a way for the writer to soften logistical problems caused by game mechanics? Like, for instance, if a trebon won't follow you because you don't have enough leadership and you have to leave them behind, or if there's eggs left in front of the cylinder. You want us to have, like, dialogue written that says, you know, something about, oh, well, too bad.
Well, a lot of what you do as a writer in games is actually coming up with answers to things like that. And there's kind of a balance that you have to strike, because you can't do everything. And also, some things are better left uncommented. You're not always helping by drawing the player's attention to this or that and trying to come up with an explanation. I mean, sometimes stuff just happens in the real world too. Things go wrong, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to allow for a certain flexibility. So if you try to basically have an answer for every single thing, you might break the game doing that. But it is a constant struggle, and it is part of what we do. So you do often end up going like, okay, can I come up with a voiceover line or a little bit of lore somewhere or something that makes sense of this one game mechanic? That's part of the struggle.
That helps. Good question. Here's one. Is the Eternal Cylinder thematically connected to some of your previous works, or even Ace's? You're pretty fascinated by ideas of law, conventional society, and how that interacts with creativity and dreams in some of your other games. So, does this happen in the Eternal Cylinder, or are there themes that we can expect?
Well, I mean, writers tend over time to get obsessed with certain themes, so it does have overlap with other things that I've written about, and that obviously also that Ace Team is interested in. I mean, there's a reason they hired me. There's a reason I get along with them, and we sort of can talk to each other quite well. So it does explore certain themes that I don't want to spoil stuff about the game though, but it does have certain crossover with things that interest me. Although at the same time, it also has stuff that I don't think I've ever really had in a game before as such. Certain ideas about what the cylinder represents versus, I mean, this isn't some cheap allegory where it's like this is this and this is that, but like the themes around the cylinder itself and then the trebum and what they are. It's not exactly the same as I've written in everything else, but again, if I go into too much detail, I'll spoil the actual experience of playing the game, which is the most important thing here.
As a game designer, obviously you enjoy video games. What are your favorite genres, and are you playing anything currently?
I like a lot of different games. Probably my top favorite video game series are the Stalker games. Um, Buggy as hell as they are my absolute favorites, because of the just sense of place in those games. Um, so that's probably my number one favorite. I like RPGs, but there's not enough RPGs that I actually enjoy. Um, Very big fan of the old Gothic series, especially one and two. Fallout 1 and 2. You'll notice a lot of old games on my list.
Still good stories. Those.
Yeah, in a sense of a world that you can interact with, and that's interesting and alive and detailed. I'm of more recent games. I'm a very big fan of Far Cry Primal. That's a great game. I like the other Far Cry's too, but Primal is my favorite by far. Again, it's the sense of place of being somewhere for real and inhabiting this character is very appealing to me. And also, I really like, and this relates to the Eternal Cylinder. I really like games where you enter a world and you have to understand the rules of that world and how to live in that world. That's very true of Stalker. It's very true of Primal. And it's very true of the Eternal Cylinder. You're thrust into this alien environment, and a lot of the game is just understanding how to survive in that world and what its rules are. And I really love that. That's to me one of the best experiences that video games can offer. I have a lot of other favorite games as well, obviously. I do play a fair amount, although I have trouble finding something that I really enjoy. I was recently playing Assassin's Creed Origins, Egypt one. I've just started. I don't have much to say about it yet. I haven't played many Assassin's Creed games. I actually haven't played any, I think. I played the first one and didn't really get on with it 500 years ago. And now I'm sort of checking them out a little bit. And I'm replaying Slime Rancher right now because I'm very fond of that game.
A good one.
It's a very nice, relaxing game. I mean, I happily alternate between quite different extremes. Like one moment I'm exploring the zone and it's extremely difficult and challenging. I'm dodging anomalies and shooting monsters, and the next I'm collecting slimes and shooting them into little, things. Like so. To me, there's quite a lot of variety in what I play. I just finished Just Cause 3. That was fun.
I'm with
Terrible,
Origins. I'm playing that now.
Stories, but
yeah, but I have not played that one. So when someone gives you this idea, and Ace comes to you and says, "Okay, I want you to write the Eternal Cylinder. Here's like the basic things we know." Are they showing you concept art to ask you, "Okay, here's a picture of what we think this looks like. Can you write about it?" Or are you the kind of originator and then the concept art comes after?
that depends on the project. In the case of the Eternal Cylinder, it's more Ace Team coming to me and saying, "Here we have this and we have that," and so I don't originate it, but I try to make sense of it. There is a certain back and forth in this, however. Like Ace Team came to me with a version of the story, and I said, "Okay, but I think we need to change this and we need to change that to just make it more satisfying, make it more meaningful." And once we, worked through that, then certain changes were made based on my ideas. So it does kind of go back and forth. But otherwise, mostly it's like, "Here, we made this creature. What do you think this creature is?" Or, "We have these ideas about what it is, but can you fit it into the world?" And so yeah, that is my function usually, at least on this project.
I think the community has really responded to sort of, like you said, being present in the game and really enjoying just kind of the experience of all the world aspects, the creatures, all that stuff. So I think that speaks well of hopefully everyone wants to live in this world a little while longer and try out some more stuff. I know you guys are looking forward to other things in the game. We're going to take more questions from Discord. We're getting close to the end of the interview portion, so if you have extra things to ask, please do. I'm going to pause a minute to make an announcement. I know you guys are really anxious for the game to come out. This is not an announcement on the launch date, so expectations, guys, let's keep them. But we do have some exciting news that should make your weekend good. The Eternal Cylinder will be a part of the Xbox Second Summer Game Fest event. Just have to pause, that's quite a mouthful. But it's basically an opportunity to discover a lot of the hottest games coming to Xbox, and we're super excited that the Eternal Cylinder will be a part of it with our partner. So that's running now until June 21st, and what that means for you guys, other than, hey, it's really cool for us, is that there is a demo that is live right now for the Xbox Series XS and Xbox One. and you can go there and basically download it. Now, I know there's going to be questions. I know you guys are going to have questions about this. So I'm going to pick the ones I think you're going to ask most frequently, and then I'm going to answer them. So like I said, the demo will be playable until June 21st. And this is the same content as the PC beta. So yes, this is the same content. This is the first chapter of the game. It is now updated with bug fixes and community requests from the PC beta. So thanks a lot, guys, for reporting that. Hopefully that is all in there now for Xbox players. Since the game is coming out for Xbox One, the question is, can you still play the demo on your Series XS? Yes, you can do that. It is available for download. It's obviously, you know, not going to be necessarily the top of the graphics thing that you can play on the Series XS, but it is going to look amazing, so I think you should play it. If you have a PS4 and you want to play, I know, I hear you guys. We want to bring the opportunity to try out this demo to as many launch platforms as possible. Microsoft happened to have this event, and so we were super honored to have been chosen, and it's an opportunity to share with our Xbox fans. So we're open to Sony opportunities, and hopefully they would coincide with our timeline, and we are on the lookout for future events. So we're not trying to neglect you, our PS4 fans and players, but this was one of those things that was a great opportunity. So I hope that those of you who played on PC enjoyed it, and hopefully those who want to play on Xbox will also get to join it. So come to Discord if you have any other questions, you want to chat with us. If you're playing and you have any kind of bugs or things you'd like to let us know, please pop over to Discord. There'll be a link in the chat for you. And there we go, the announcement. Let's jump back. You guys have further questions? Okay, Blue Critter Games asks, how do you balance explaining a world with leaving things to the imagination of the player?
Carefully. It's okay. So with the Eternal Cylinder, it's very important, I think, that it leaves a lot to the imagination. First of all, because the central principle of the game is that a lot has been lost. It is very much about what the Trebhum and the Trewala have lost. That is a significant element of the game. So you can't just dump tons of lore in there. Because the important thing is the artistic effect, right? The story effect, like what are you going to experience? And I find it generally more effective and more interesting to be evocative rather than to just give you lists of stuff. I think some games overdo it a little bit with just basically you start the game and you get like, a wiki that's just full of information. But that's not really reflected in the game. I'm not criticizing the people who make that because I know how difficult it is to make games, and there's many games that I've made that aren't the way that I would like them to be. But I think good stories paint a world that is bigger than what we actually see. So it kind of, part of it exists in our imagination, and I think that's a very wonderful effect to have. So I try to always have little breadcrumbs that lead beyond the edges of the actual game to inspire you and to give you this feeling of this vast world that is out there. And without defining all the details about that, I mean, sometimes I have an idea in my mind of what exactly it is, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I would only know if we made a game about that and then explored it. I mean, I make sure that it makes sense, but I do believe in sort of always having these little elements that go beyond the specific story that you're telling and that paint a bigger picture.
You guys love puzzles. Little bit of that. Like you've been discovering some gems here and there in the descriptions of things, and then learning more about the story. So love that.
Yeah, I should actually say that very intentionally, this is a game about putting things together yourself. Not the first game I've written that has this element. Talos has a lot of this as well. So it's not a game that's just gonna spoon feed you every answer. I think it's more enjoyable if putting together the story is part of what you're doing as a player. It's part of the puzzle of the game is understanding where everything comes from and why. And the details are there that will give you the answers, but they're not just going to be presented to you in a super simple way. Because I think that you know, that's part of the joy of engaging with a story told through a video game.
I hope you guys have gleaned some great things from Jonas. Pleasure to talk to you and have you on. And I think we're gonna wrap up, guys. So thank you for joining us this Friday, and yeah, it's been lovely, Jonas. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure, and I really love this game. This I can confidently say that this was one of my favorite experiences as a game writer. I really love the guys at Ace Team, and I really love the experience of making this game and how passionate about it everyone was, and yeah, how the decisions that we made were made to make a better game and not for any other reason.
It's very special, and it will be coming out later this year, guys. So we will have an announce at some point, letting you know the exact date. But yes, later this year it will be out. And stay tuned for not next Friday, but the next Friday after that, we will have another live stream. And don't forget to join us in Discord if you want to get all sorts of cool info like this and little videos that we make, and just talk to us and the devs on a more daily basis. Have a great Friday, and we'll talk to you guys soon.